Where's the compliance audit from Q3? My voice cut through the polite applause like a blade. 280 people in that Phoenix ballroom went dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning kick in, the soft clink of ice in water glasses, someone's chair creaking as they shifted to stare. Bradford Thornton froze at the podium. Just half a second, long enough for me to catch his jaw tighten before that politician's smile snapped back into place. Thank you, Dan. I think we can address that offline. I'd prefer to address it now. I stayed standing, manila folder gripped tight in my sweating palm. The edges were cutting into my fingers, especially the $42 million discrepancy in material costs. The smile died completely. Bradford Brad Thornton, 59 years old, son of a former senator, CEO of Apex Systems. Never spent a day in uniform but loved talking about supporting our troops. Right now, he looked like someone had just told him his trust fund evaporated. Daniel Sullivan is no longer employed by Apex Systems, he said into the microphone. His voice echoed off the hotel walls. Effective immediately. I thought he was joking. You don't fire someone at a Department of Defense contract renewal meeting. Not in front of 2 congressmen and a room full of military brass. But I could see security guards moving along the back wall, their radios crackling to life. This wasn't the annual shareholders meeting in some sterile conference room. This was the quarterly DoD contract review at the Fairmont Scottsdale Princess. We had procurement officials from the Pentagon, Defense Appropriations Committee members, and about 50 Apex executives. The meeting that decided if we kept our $850 million contract for soldier equipment. I'm Dan Sullivan, 52 years old, did 12 years in the Army including 2 tours in Iraq, then 20 years doing corporate audits. Thought I'd seen every kind of corruption there was. Turns out I was wrong. The folder in my hand contained copies of the real Q3 compliance audit. Not the sanitized version they'd presented to the board 15 months ago. The one that showed Apex had been overcharging the DoD $42 million over 3 years for substandard body armor materials. Brad had turned back to his presentation like I'd never existed. The PowerPoint slide behind him showed a graph of outstanding quality metrics and exceeded performance standards. All lies. I walked out slow, past the fake plants in their ceramic pots, past those motivational posters about excellence and integrity. The irony wasn't lost on me. Nobody said a word. Not my boss, Jerry Kowalski, who I'd worked with for 8 years. Not the VPs I'd pulled all-nighters for during merger prep. Not even the junior auditors I'd trained from scratch. The security guard who escorted me was professional about it. No handcuffs, no drama, just his hand on my elbow and a quiet, "This way, sir," as we headed for the lobby doors. The desert air hit me like opening an oven door. Phoenix in September still felt like 110 degrees, but it was better than the suffocating atmosphere inside. The valet stand was empty, except for one kid in a red vest who pretended not to stare as I stood there on the circular driveway. I'd made it maybe 10 steps when I heard footsteps behind me. Expensive leather soles on concrete, deliberate and measured. Military cadence. "Repeat your question." I turned around. Colonel James Walker, 68 years old, silver hair, shoulders still straight as a rifle barrel. Apex's board chairman and my former commanding officer from the 82nd Airborne. The kind of man who'd never wasted a word in his life. "The Q3 audit, sir," I said, falling back into old habits. It showed $42 million in cost overruns on the body armor contracts, material defects that could get soldiers killed. Jim just looked at me, not surprised, not angry, just measuring, like he was calculating artillery range in his head. "You have documentation?" "Yes, sir. Multiple copies." He nodded once. Sharp, definitive. Then he turned and walked back toward the hotel entrance, his posture never changing. That was it. No thanks, no promises, no explanation. Just that single nod that meant he'd heard me and filed it away. I got in my F-150 and sat there for a minute, engine off, AC blasting. The steering wheel was hot enough to brand cattle. My phone was already buzzing with notifications. Work email locked out, VPN access denied, Slack account suspended. They weren't just firing me, they were erasing me. I drove home to my empty house in Scottsdale, windows down because the AC couldn't keep up. My wife Linda had died of cancer 8 months ago, and I still wasn't used to the silence when I walked through the front door. Work had been my escape, my way of not thinking about the empty spaces where her voice used to be. The house felt like a museum now, her coffee mug still in the dishwasher, her bookmark still holding her place in some romance novel she'd never finish. I'd been meaning to box up her things, but every time I started, I'd find myself just sitting on the bedroom floor holding one of her sweaters. I pulled an old backup drive from my desk drawer, 5 years old, thick with dust, the kind of redundancy habit you develop when you've seen too many lost files. It took 20 minutes to boot up, the fan wheezing like it might die any second. But eventually I found what I was looking for. The original Q3 audit was all there. 3 different versions, each one cleaner than the last. The first draft showed serious problems with the Kevlar suppliers, substandard materials, failed stress tests, corners cut to meet profit margins that would make shareholders happy. By the final version, all of that had been sanitized into minor procedural adjustments and ongoing quality improvements. Corporate speak for we buried the problems and hoped nobody noticed. The metadata told the real story. The files had been edited right up until the day before official submission. Someone had systematically removed every red flag, every warning, every piece of evidence that might threaten the DoD contract. But they'd been sloppy. Digital fingerprints everywhere, timestamps showing who accessed what and when, email headers proving the cover-up went all the way to the top. I made copies, multiple copies on different drives. Old Army habit, redundancy saves lives. The call came the next morning at 6:47 a.m., unknown number. I'd been awake since 4, sitting at my kitchen table with cold coffee and printouts spread everywhere like crime scene evidence. Dan, it's Mark Rodriguez from Defense Today. I heard what happened yesterday. Mark was a journalist I'd met at industry conferences. Former Marine, Iraq vet like me had made a career out of exposing defense contractor fraud, the kind of guy who'd crawl through a sewer to get a story if it meant protecting troops. Word is they're already spinning this, he said. His voice was low, careful. HR's putting out that you've been unstable for weeks, erratic behavior, obsessing over minor discrepancies. I wasn't surprised. Standard corporate playbook. Destroy the messenger before the message gets out. Make the whistleblower look crazy. They're also claiming the audit you mentioned doesn't exist, calling it a phantom report. That made me laugh, but not the good kind. I've got 3 versions of it, Mark, complete with timestamps and revision history. Can you prove it? Meet me tonight. Denny's on McDowell. I'll show you everything. The rest of the day dragged like a root canal. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Kept checking my phone for messages that weren't coming. The house felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. Linda's absence was louder than ever. Around 3 p.m., I drove to the grocery store just to get out. Stood in the cereal aisle for 10 minutes, staring at boxes of Cheerios, not seeing anything. An old lady asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, which was the biggest lie I'd told all week. That evening, I spread the documents across the booth at Denny's like I was briefing a mission. Mark went through them slowly, his reporter instincts kicking in. Coffee got cold. Waitress refilled it twice. This isn't just accounting fraud, he said after an hour, tapping the pages with his pen. This is about soldier safety. If these materials are substandard. 8 soldiers, KIA in Syria. 8 months ago, I said quietly. Equipment failures. Mark's jaw tightened. You could see the Marine in him surface. You think there's a connection? I think $42 million buys a lot of corners to cut. He started taking pictures with his phone, the camera flash reflecting off the laminated tabletop. I'm going to need verification. Independent sources. I might be able to help with that. Over the next few days, people started reaching out. Anonymous messages through encrypted apps, former colleagues who'd seen pieces of the puzzle. 3 retired colonels working at competing defense firms confirmed they'd heard rumors about Apex's quality control issues. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Cameron Thornton, Brad's 38-year-old son and Apex's CFO, contacted me through a burner email account. The subject line just said, "We need to talk." Not about choosing sides, the message read. About doing what's right. We met at a diner on the outskirts of Phoenix, the kind of place that served coffee in thick white mugs and had sticky vinyl booths. Cameron looked like he hadn't slept in days, dark circles under his eyes, 5 o'clock shadow at noon, hands shaking when he reached for his coffee. My father sold $8.5 million in stock 2 weeks before the DoD investigation started, he said without any preamble. Just laid it out there like he was ripping off a bandage. Why are you telling me this? Because I helped him bury that audit, Cameron said, staring at his reflection in the black coffee. And because I found out yesterday that the faulty armor plating killed a kid from my neighborhood, Billy Murphy, 19 years old. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd been thinking about this in abstracts. Numbers, percentages, profit margins. But Billy Murphy had a name, had a family, had plans that would never happen now. Cameron slid a flash drive across the table. The plastic was warm from his pocket. Phone recordings, email chains, bank records. Everything you need to prove insider trading and fraud. I looked at him across the table, really looked at him. This was Brad Thornton's son, heir to the family fortune, next in line for the corporate throne. This destroys your father. My father destroyed himself, Cameron said. His voice cracked a little. He tried to make me his accomplice, but I can't live with Billy Murphy's blood on my hands. What about your future, your career? What future? He laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. You think I can look at myself in the mirror knowing I helped kill American soldiers for profit? I pocketed the flash drive. This won't be easy. Federal investigation, congressional hearings, media circus. Neither was Fallujah, Cameron said, but we did our duty there. Cameron had served 4 years as an Army finance officer before joining Apex. I'd forgotten that. He wasn't just some trust fund kid playing dress-up in Daddy's company. He was a veteran who'd taken an oath to protect and defend. What changed your mind? I asked. I called Billy's mom yesterday, he said quietly. Told her I was sorry for her loss. She thanked me for supporting our troops. He wiped his eyes with his sleeve. I couldn't tell her that my company killed her son. We sat in silence for a minute, both of us staring at our coffee like it might have answers. There's something else, Cameron said finally. Colonel Walker has been asking questions. Quietly. He's been reviewing contracts, checking supplier records, cross-referencing casualty reports. Jim Walker, my old CO. I should have known he wouldn't let this slide. He knows, doesn't he? He's been building a case for months. Your audit question yesterday just gave him the excuse to move. The DoD Inspector General's investigation moved faster than I expected. Within a week, federal agents were executing search warrants at Apex headquarters. I watched it on the local news from my living room, feeling like I was watching my old life get demolished in real time. Brad Thornton held a press conference denying all allegations, called it a witch hunt, blamed disgruntled former employees, promised full cooperation with authorities, standard crisis management playbook. But behind the scenes, everything was falling apart. The FBI showed up at my door on a Tuesday morning. 2 agents in dark suits, badges out, asking if I had a few minutes to talk, like I had a choice. Agent Jennifer Brooks was the lead investigator. Sharp eyes, no-nonsense attitude, the kind of person who'd probably been taking down white-collar criminals since before I knew what insider trading was. Her partner was younger, quiet, took notes while she asked questions. Mr. Sullivan, we understand you have documentation regarding irregularities in Apex Systems' DoD contracts, she said, settling into my kitchen chair like she belonged there. I'd been expecting this call for days, had the flash drives ready, copies organized, timeline written out, but sitting across from federal agents in my own kitchen still felt surreal. Before we begin, Brooks said, I want you to know that Apex's legal team has already been in touch. They're claiming you falsified documents, that you're a disgruntled employee with a history of instability. History of instability? Apparently you've been struggling since your wife's death. Missing work, erratic behavior, obsessing over minor accounting discrepancies. She said it matter-of-factly, watching my reaction. I felt my jaw clench, using Linda's death against me. That was low even by corporate standards. My wife died 8 months ago, I said slowly. Cancer. I took 3 days bereavement leave and came back to work because sitting in this empty house was killing me. If that's instability, then half the country's unstable. Brooks nodded. We've already spoken with several of your colleagues. Your work record is exemplary. 20 years, no disciplinary actions, commendations for thoroughness and accuracy. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a file folder. We've also spoken with Cameron Thornton. That surprised me. Already? He contacted us the day after your meeting, turned over his phone recordings, email access, bank records. Full cooperation. She paused. That's unusual in cases like this. Family members rarely flip that quickly. Billy Murphy changed his mind. The soldier killed in Syria? Cameron called the kid's mother. Couldn't live with himself after that. Brooks wrote something in her notebook. "We're going to need your testimony before a federal grand jury. Are you prepared for what that means?" I knew what it meant. Congressional hearings, media attention, Apex's lawyers trying to destroy my credibility. Character assassination on a national scale. Colonel Walker. "Vouching for you helps," she said, like she was reading my mind. "Medal of Honor recipient, 30-year military career, unimpeachable reputation. When someone like that says you're solid, people listen." The investigation moved faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, Brad Thornton was arrested during an emergency board meeting. The FBI walked right into the Apex conference room and read him his rights in front of the same executives who'd watched him fire me. I saw it on the evening news. Brad in handcuffs, being led out of the building he'd run for 15 years. The reporter mentioned his son's cooperation, the $42 million fraud, the connection to soldier deaths in Syria. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Local news, national outlets, congressional staff members. I unplugged the landline and turned off my cell. Wasn't ready to be the face of corporate whistleblowing yet. Colonel Walker called me that evening on my neighbor's phone. "The company needs new leadership in the compliance department," he said without preamble. "Interim position, with full authority to investigate and report directly to the board." What about Brad's allies? What allies? I could hear the smile in his voice. Amazing how quickly people forget their loyalties when federal agents start asking questions. The trial took 8 months. I testified for 3 days, walked through every document, every timeline, every piece of evidence. Apex's lawyers tried to paint me as a bitter ex-employee seeking revenge, but the evidence was too overwhelming. Brad's defense strategy was predictable. Blame underlings, claim ignorance, portray himself as the victim of overzealous prosecutors. Didn't work. When you've got your own son testifying against you, recorded phone calls and financial records showing insider trading, denial only goes so far. Cameron took the stand on day 12 of the trial. Watching him testify against his father was one of the hardest things I'd ever seen. His voice shook when he described the cover-up, the falsified reports, the deliberate decision to ignore safety warnings. The prosecutor asked him about Billy Murphy. "I called his mother," Cameron said, barely audible, "told her I was sorry for her loss. She thanked me for supporting our troops." His voice broke. "I couldn't tell her that my father's company killed her son for profit." The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning, the court reporter's fingers on the keyboard, someone in the gallery crying softly. Brad's lawyer objected, said it was prejudicial. The judge overruled, said the jury had a right to understand the human cost of corporate fraud. The verdict came back after 6 hours of deliberation, guilty on all counts: securities fraud, conspiracy, violation of the False Claims Act, the works. Judge Patricia Hendricks didn't mince words during sentencing. "Mr. Thornton, your actions represent a profound betrayal of trust. American soldiers depend on contractors like Apex to provide equipment that will protect them and bring them home safely. You prioritize profit over their lives. 15 years in federal prison. $60 million in restitution to the Department of Defense. Forfeiture of all assets obtained through fraud." Brad stood there like a statue when she read the sentence. No emotion, no reaction, just staring straight ahead like he couldn't believe this was happening to him. Cameron got 18 months and lifetime ban from the defense industry. Cooperating with federal prosecutors saved him from the full weight of justice, but he'd never work in defense contracting again. After the sentencing, I stood on the courthouse steps with Ashley, my 20-year-old daughter. She'd driven down from ASU for the trial, skipped classes to be there for the verdict. "Was it worth it, Dad?" she asked. "All of this?" I thought about Billy Murphy, 19 years old, killed by equipment that failed because someone wanted better quarterly earnings. Thought about all the soldiers currently deployed, depending on contractors to provide gear that would keep them alive. "Some fights pick you, kiddo," I told her. "When they do, you don't get to walk away just because it's hard." The Phoenix media called me a hero. Congressional representatives wanted photo ops. Defense industry publications wrote editorials about corporate accountability. I just wanted to go home and figure out what came next. Colonel Walker called me 3 days after the sentencing, said he wanted to meet for coffee, had something to discuss. We met at a quiet place downtown, away from the media circus that was still following the Apex story. "The board voted unanimously," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee, They want you as chief compliance officer. Full authority, direct reporting to me as chairman, complete access to all contracts and suppliers. I stared at my coffee cup. They want me to come back? They want you to rebuild the company from the ground up, clean house, establish new protocols, make sure nothing like this ever happens again. It felt strange. 6 months ago, they'd erased me like I never existed. Now they wanted me to fix what Brad had broken. The DoD contract? Suspended pending review. But if we can prove we've implemented real changes, real oversight, they're willing to consider reinstating it. He leaned back in his chair. That's a big if, Dan. This isn't about public relations or damage control. This is about earning back trust that took decades to build. I thought about Billy Murphy's mother, about the soldiers currently deployed with equipment from other contractors who might be cutting the same corners Brad had cut. I want full audit authority, I said. Every supplier, every contract, every cost overrun. No exceptions, done. And I want a whistleblower protection program, anonymous reporting, independent investigation, zero retaliation, already written into your job description. I took the job, not because I needed the money. Linda's life insurance and my military pension meant Ashley's college was covered and I could retire comfortably. But because the mission wasn't finished, the first 6 months were brutal. We terminated contracts with 12 suppliers who couldn't meet new quality standards, implemented independent testing protocols that tripled our material costs but eliminated defects, lost $40 million in short-term profit. The board grumbled. Shareholders complained. Stock price dropped 15%. I didn't care. Every night I went home knowing that no American soldier would die because Apex Systems cut corners on their equipment. Mark Rodriguez from Defense Today wrote a follow-up story 8 months later. From whistleblower to watchdog, how Dan Sullivan reformed a broken system. The article quoted Colonel Walker. Dan Sullivan didn't just expose corruption, he built something better in its place. That's the difference between revenge and justice. Ashley graduated from ASU with a degree in journalism. Said she wanted to follow in Mark's footsteps, hold corporations accountable, protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Made me proud in ways I couldn't put into words. Cameron Thornton disappeared after his release. Moved to Oregon, took a job as a small-town CPA, sent me a Christmas card the first year with a simple message. Thank you for showing me what honor looks like. I kept it on my desk as a reminder that redemption was possible, even after you'd lost your way. The real test came 2 years later. A junior auditor named Kevin Mills found discrepancies in a subcontractor's invoices. Small stuff, maybe $200,000 over 6 months. The kind of thing that used to get buried in quarterly adjustments. Kevin was nervous when he brought it to me. New guy, afraid of making waves, worried about his career. What do you think we should do? I asked him. Follow the evidence, he said quietly, wherever it leads. I smiled. Then that's what we do. The investigation uncovered a kickback scheme involving 3 Apex purchasing managers and a parts supplier. Nothing like the Brad Thornton scandal, but corruption nonetheless. We fired the managers, terminated the supplier, reported everything to the DoD Inspector General. Cost us another contract, more bad publicity. Board meeting was tense. This is exactly what we hired you to do, Colonel Walker told the complainers. Better to find our own problems than have federal agents find them for us. That weekend, I drove out to the Arizona Veterans Memorial. They'd added a new section for Operation Enduring Freedom Casualties. Billy Murphy's name was there, etched in black granite along with hundreds of others. I stood there for a long time, reading names, thinking about the weight of responsibility. These weren't just casualties of war. Some of them were casualties of corporate greed, killed by equipment that failed because someone prioritized profit over protection. You didn't die for nothing, I said quietly to Billy's name. And it won't happen again. Not on my watch. Ashley met me for dinner that night. She was working as an investigative reporter for the Arizona Republic, covering environmental issues and corporate accountability. Any regrets, Dad? She asked over dessert. About everything that happened? I thought about it. About Linda not being there to see how things turned out. About the stress and uncertainty and months of media attention. About Brad Thornton sitting in federal prison, his empire destroyed. Your mom used to say that some people are put on this earth to comfort the disturbed, I said. And others are here to disturb the comfortable. Which one are you? I used to think I was the first kind. Steady, reliable, don't rock the boat, keep your head down and do your job. I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl. Turns out I was wrong. You disturb the comfortable? I disturbed the hell out of them. Ashley laughed. Mom would be proud. She'd probably say I took too long to figure it out. The waiter brought the check. Outside, Phoenix was cooling down from another scorching day. Traffic was light, the desert sky turning purple. So what's next? Ashley asked as we walked to our cars. Next week I'm testifying before Congress about defense contractor oversight. Next month we're implementing new supply chain auditing protocols. Next year, I shrugged, next year we'll find new problems to fix. Sounds like you're in this for the long haul. Someone has to be. I drove home through the desert thinking about oaths and duty and the difference between a job and a calling. The house was still empty, Linda was still gone, but the silence didn't feel oppressive anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Kevin Mills. Found another discrepancy. Small one, but worth investigating. Should I dig deeper? I typed back, always dig deeper. That night I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the latest supplier audit reports. Same table where I'd spread out the original Q3 documents 3 years ago. Same feeling of responsibility, but different now. Proactive instead of reactive. They'd fired me for asking one question. Now I was paid to ask all the questions. I took an oath once to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Turned out some of the domestic ones wore expensive suits and carried briefcases instead of weapons. But an oath is an oath. It doesn't expire just because you change uniforms. The mission continues.